So about a year ago, I walk into a shop and I'm returning some items that didn't work. Now this is a secondhand shop. I like to every so often just go to these secondhand shops and see what I can find. In this case, I brought back these two speakers that were duds, and they said, look, we can accept them back, but you have to take store credit. And that's when I found this tiny little Japanese toy piano. Okay, now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking he's going to make a, decent sampler version of this little toy piano. Yes, but also no. Okay, I'm going to do things a little different. I know that every other sampler person samples a toy piano. And that's cool. I mean, toy pianos are like a rite of passage, you could say. But I wanted to do something else with it. And this idea came to me when the toy piano got destroyed by my 2-year-old child.
She ripped off the top, exposed all those tubes inside, and then ripped out every single key. I then had to go back and put everything back together. After doing that, and then testing all the keys to make sure it all still worked, I had an idea.
I got thinking, what do I have? It's a tiny toy piano. What can I do different is I can make it try to sound big, immersive, like a dream-like toy piano. And that's what it came to me. The Claustrophobic Piano from Christian Henson was quite the instrument. He put a big duvet over the piano. He had a KU-100, one of those head mics set up, and it's really cool. It's a really fun, nice sounding piano. Very intimate. What if I could get this tiny toy piano to be a claustrophobic toy piano? Now, this idea wasn't completely my own. It started kind of as a joke on Discord. I was chatting with some people, and ever since Christian Henson left Piano Book, people have been looking for the claustrophobic piano, and it's been removed from a piano book. And so I, joking around about me recording a toy piano, and then somebody said, you should just call it the claustrophobic toy piano, and I was like, you know what? This is a great idea. This video is going to be in 2 parts. Part 1 is how to sample. I know lots of people make videos on how to sample instruments and how to go about doing that for Decent Sampler. Dave Hilowitz has done an excellent tutorial himself. However, I work for my day job in education, and in my opinion, sometimes it takes a different person saying the same thing in a different way to understand or click with it. So with that in mind, I'm going to give it a go. In a sense, this toy piano is perfect for a how to sample video. It's got really clear keys, was recorded using a single SM57, which is a great mic. If you want to buy a mic for sampling, or actually just an all-rounder mic that can do pretty much everything and pretty much make everything sound good, SM57 is fantastic for that. So it's recorded with simple 1 mic position, that's it. So I'm going to go from how I recorded it, stepping into how I chopped up those samples, and then after that, in the second part 2 video, I'm going to talk about how I made this claustrophobic toy piano have a unique, different sound. Gershon from the future coming here, and it was not that easy. It was not 2 parts. It's not going to be 2 parts. Okay, I'm just going to give the rundown of what's going to be. This video is definitely going to be a simple video, how to sample it, just the basics of sampling. After that, I'm going to make a tutorial on NNXT, which is Reason's native sampler. The reason I'm using NNXT first is NNXT, for me, is far simpler to program and understand, and I'm kind of using that as a sketch pad to kind of draw out the idea. So that will be the second video, will be about how I put all this into NNXT. And then the third video will be how I then do that in Decent Sampler. So if you are not a Reason user, you'll probably skip the second video and wait for the third one, which is the Decent Sampler specific one. Though you might, if you're into kind of sound editing, be interested to see how I use NNXT to sculpt and change the original samples a little bit to get the vibe that I want. All right, let's go back now into the how to sample video. So the first thing you're going to need if you're going to sample an instrument is obviously a microphone to sample with. I recommend that if you're going to record, that you also have a audio recording interface like the Focusrite or something else like that. You don't have to have that, but it does help. Once you get that set up, you need to decide for yourself where the best position is for your microphone to be placed at. So if it's a guitar, it can be placed in many different spots, and you have to listen back to your recordings and see what sounds the best. For me, I put the microphone just above, aiming straight down at the resonator of the little toy piano, and that gave me the sound I wanted. I wanted minimal key noise because I wanted to record that separately, and I wanted a lot of the actual tubes ringing, so that's why I aimed it at that area. A lot of people also ask about using dynamic or condenser mics. I personally have been using my dynamic mic way more. I have 3 condenser mics actually, but they're so sensitive that they tend to pick up a lot of background noise that you don't want in your recording. So, for example, air conditioning. Where I live, it's very hot, so we have air conditioning on often. So it can pick up that kind of noise. It can pick up your PC if your PC fans are spinning a lot. It can pick up the creaks on the floor or the pops of your bones if you're using a condenser mic. It's much more sensitive, which could also be a good thing. If you have the perfect recording environment, it's great to use a condenser. However, if you're in a more noisy recording environment, sometimes using a dynamic mic, which is less sensitive and can be closer to whatever you're trying to do, is better. So it really depends on your situation. If you are a person who has experience with cleaning up sound files from background noise, etc., you could obviously opt to just use a condenser mic if you want. However, I will say that having done multiple sampled instruments now, the noise floor, as they call it, which is the lowest level of background noise, when you normalize those samples, which I'll show you how to do in a minute, that noise floor goes up. And when you're playing multiple of the same samples with the same noise floor, that same background noise that you have, that can stack. So if I'm playing a chord, now I have 3 times that background aircon noise. So those are things you have to consider as you set up. So once you got that microphone set up into the position you want, you obviously give it several test runs to see how it sounds and see if you're getting the desired sound that you want. You listen back, and once you feel like you've got your mic position correct, you start recording. At this point, you need to record the takes. Now, there's something called round robins, which is how many times you play the same note. The reason people use multiple samples of the same note is because if you use only one sample and you hit the same note over and over, it ends up creating a bit of a machine gun sound. It sounds like the same sound every time, and the human ear recognizes that the sample is the same sample every single time. Instruments with resonators, like a toy piano or a guitar, every time you hit the string or the key, the sound is slightly different. So that's why you record multiple takes of the same note. So 2 round robins means you record the same note 2 times, and it cycles between the 2. And often, if you want to get more complex, you do 3 or even 5 round robins. So that means there's 5 or 3 different samples. So every time you hit that one note, you will get a different sample. I'm going to show you how I did it in my recording. We're going to do 7 round robins of a low velocity, so playing quietly, and a loud velocity. That's a lot of round robins just because I'm being a little crazy about this.
And the reason I wanted to do so many round robins when I recorded was because I wanted this toy piano to be extra nice and sound really natural. So what you'll see me do now, or what I'm doing right now in the video, is I'm checking, making sure all the mic levels are correct and making sure my DAW is recording. And now you hear me start recording. So that's one hit of the note, and I hit it again. And basically I repeat this process for ages. So I'm going to speed up the video from now so you don't have to watch this for every single note. So this is sped up by 5,000%, and you can imagine, yeah, this takes a while and it's a little bit boring, but hey, when it all comes together, it's worth it. As you can see towards the end of the keyboard, I had 3 black keys missing, so I had to work around that. All right, so here you can see all the samples recorded, the soft ones, the loud ones. I also recorded some key noise. And the next step is to cut all these up into separate files. For this, I don't actually use Reason. I use Reaper because Reaper can do a lot of that for me faster than Reason does. So I'm going to export these long files one by one into Reaper. So here's an example. I'm doing the soft ones first, and you can see that I put it in the program. Then I have to make sure it's selected. Then I go up to the action list, which you'll see me go up to in a second. So rather than cut these all one by one with a little cutter like that, which would take a long time, I go up, I go to actions, then I go to see action list, and then I type in auto split. Auto trim, auto split, removing silence. So with this, it's important to realize there are several ways you can split. So what I just showed you was a splitting by the silences. So it's an auto split. Another way you can split these sound files is something called dynamic split, where it listens to how loud it is, and you can set that threshold, and it will split when the sound comes, and when the sound finishes, it will split it again. And you can set that one a little bit more specifically. So if you're doing dynamic split, you get a little bit more options. If you're doing the auto split, it kind of does it faster for you. Which one you use depends on which instrument you're recording. In this case, the instrument I was using was quite percussive, right? It makes quite a short sound, donk, and it's off. So the auto split worked fine. I've had other cases where I've had to use the dynamic split and mess around with the settings until I got the right one. Okay, so next up, I'm going to go to the action list again. I'm going to type in insert region. And what inserting the regions does is it will make all those little clips separate marked regions, which makes it easier for exporting. So now that I've done that, you can see there's all these little regions there. And now I'm going to open the region render matrix. So the region render matrix allows me to select certain regions and export those files. All right, so now I'm going to go to render. And I'm going to make sure that my settings say region render matrix. And for the second option, you can just leave it on the first thing there. There you go. And now I am able to actually select the regions that I want to take out. So you'll see me drag it up in a second so we can actually see it. There they are. All of them are now clickable for me. So what I now do is I click all the notes that I want to export and I label them. One thing you definitely don't want to do, which is what I did in the making of this particular instrument, is mislabel all your files. So rather than do the logical thing and look on the little keyboard to see which notes I was playing and keep a note of which notes I was playing while I was playing them, instead I decided to try and figure out by ear what pitch each note was on, and I got it slightly wrong. I was just maybe a flat or sharp in my understanding of which note was being played, but that led to every single file of mine being labeled wrongly, and then I had to go through and relabel every single file. So don't do that. If you do have software that allows you to automatically identify the root note that's being played in your sample, use it. Don't always trust it. Do double check it, because sometimes software can get it wrong. Certain instruments have overtones that kind of mess up that kind of software, so that might grab your overtone instead of your actual note. But yes, do take the time to properly check. In my case, it was because I had already gotten rid of the toy piano, and so I didn't have it on hand anymore. I'd already given it on to somebody else. So anyway, be careful when labeling your files. It will save you a lot of work later. Let's go to the next step. I did want to show you very quickly that Reason actually has this feature of, if you select the notes, right-click, and go Set Root Notes from Pitch Detection, it automatically identified that this was A#4. Now let's check the file. A#4. So it got it right. So that's pretty good. Here it did retune them slightly, I think, to get the sound pitch perfect. If that's something that you want to correct the pitchiness of your instrument, do that. In the case of the toy pianos are supposed to be a little bit pitchy, so I didn't want that. So I would go and change all those to 0 again. But I have recorded instruments before, like flutes, where even though flutes are naturally a little bit pitchy in real life, in samples it doesn't sound so nice, so those I would pitch correct. So Reason does allow you to kind of pitch correct in NNXT, which is pretty cool. Another option is to go in and pitch correct the samples as you're putting them into your thing. That does take more effort and more work, but it's very handy if you're maybe not just creating an NNXT instrument, but also a decent sampler version, and you want to make sure that everything is exactly on pitch. All right, so the first step, you want to open up your NNXT. It will open with Grand Piano. And it has all these files, which you can click in this little, I guess, screen within a screen. And you can actually select all of them. I just did Control-A because I'm on a Windows computer. And delete. Now all of them are gone, right? So you want to save your instrument. So when you hit save over here, it will ask you for a name. So I'm going to call this Test Toy Piano because the other one I actually made is already ready. Right, so over here, my lowest note is F4. So I'm going to find that one over here. There it is. Oh, okay, F4. And I have my F4 samples. I got 7 of them. So I select all 7, and I drag them into NNXT. Now, these are my quieter samples when I was trying to play a little quieter. So I am going to take all these samples. I'm going to tell them, okay, the root note over here, let me scroll down a bit. The root note is F4. So I'm going to keep going until I get to F4. There it is. And then I have to tell it, okay, what keys does this root note work for? So right now, it's working for a very wide range, right? But ideally, I might want it just to maybe go from C4 to F4. Now, at this point, I just have to find where I am on the keyboard. There we are. So it only does that range, okay? So that's great. I have this little part of the octave that works. Sampled instrument done, right? No, because you have to do that for every note. So you can see over here, I have done that for F4, I gave it a little bit of an extra range, but I started all the way down at C1. Now, this is optional. You don't have to have your instrument reach the whole range of a piano. For me, I like that for this instrument because I like giving people the option to mess around with it. But there are instruments where you definitely want to stick within the range of that actual instrument. So, you know, flutes or violins, they'll have specific ranges that they can play, and you don't necessarily want your sampled instrument to go beyond those ranges too much. So I have the samples over here. You can see that I have selected them from the root note. I've set the low key and the high key. Now I want these to be softer. So I'm going to change the velocity. Here you see low vel and high vel. So I'm going to say, look, this is only going to go up to 62 velocity. There we are, 62. So if the velocity is 1 to 62, it will play. But now there's another important thing over here, alt. Alt means alternating. That's essentially how you activate the round robin feature in NNXT. You turn alt on, and now you are having that it is cycling through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different sounds, and it's alternating between them. If you keep that off, it will play all the samples every time you hit that note instead of just one at a time. So got to make sure the alt is on. Now there's a lot of other parameters here that you can mess around with in NNXT, and that's exactly what I like so much about NNXT is you can continue to design your sound as time goes on. So you can add a mod envelope and an amp envelope, And you can also work with pitch bending through these envelopes. So that's really cool. That's all modulation. And you can set that to go towards the mod wheel or another external control and use it as a, in lots of ways. It can be expression, it can be aftertouch, it can be breath. You can tell it which MIDI CC it's going for. That's what makes NNXT really cool. And you can see that these are different types of waveforms that you can add into the sound. So NNXT isn't, just working as a sample instrument where it's just playing the samples back for you. It also allows you these extra design opportunities. Furthermore, if you want to, you can tune the sample differently. You can change the start and end of the samples. I often will test my samples by holding Alt and clicking. I can listen back and check the samples. Sometimes I have a sample that's a little bit late, and if I want to check it, I might edit the sample and check to make sure I didn't do anything wrong. Like on the end of this sample here, there's a little bumping sound there. I can just take that away and save it and change that. Yeah, so all these things help with making sure that your samples is what you want. So that, in short, is how you bring samples into NNXT. Obviously, if you're doing a simpler instrument, like maybe a kalimba or something that has very few notes, it's easier because you have less samples, less round robins to work with. In this case, I went a little overboard because it's a toy piano, but you know what? Why not? It's a fun experiment, so I just went pretty hard. And I have a lot of samples for every note. So it worked out in the end that not all of my samples were successful, so a couple of them have only 5 round robins, some have 7. All right, I'm going to leave this video at that, and I will show you guys the final result in a separate video because otherwise this video is going to be way too long. I hope this was useful to you guys. I hope that you are going to be able to go and start experimenting with recording sounds and turning them into your own NNXT instrument, or maybe you'll wait till I make the decent sampler video and do it on there. In the meantime, I hope you stay creative and I hope you have a wonderful time, whatever time zone you're in. Peace.